Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Let me know if you can hear me. Hi, everybody. Happy Monday. All right. So I am live on a Monday night. I've been doing Sunday afternoons. I think I did it for 2 days straight. 2 days, 2 weeks straight. And so I'm back in the evenings. And of course, yes, this is still Man Up Monday. The judge is coming on. He will be here. I'm just switching up the banner. I'm switching up the banner a little bit. And to promote me more. But yes, but the judge is going to come on and we're going to have a really good show. Of course, honey, we got to talk about the National Guards, Trump and the National Guards. Yes. Ooh, honey. So he sent the National Guards to DC, which was easy for him to do because DC is under federal control. Now he wants to send it to National Guards into Baltimore, into Chicago. They really need to go into Memphis. Ohio, the state of Ohio, which is a red state, said, hey, we do welcome. The governor said, we welcome the National Guards in areas where it's high crime. So yeah, we may see a trend of National Guard. So we have to talk about that because the Chicago mayor and Illinois governor is pushing back. Why? I don't know. And what else is on my list? Oh, we got to talk about the executive orders that Trump um signed today. No cashless bails, which is good because it did not work. It actually increased crime, right? And he issued a ban on burning the American flag. And honestly, I don't have a problem with that. And Pam Bondi was there when he signed those executive orders, and she said, "Listen, we are still going to be following the First Amendment. Is it First or Second Amendment? I think it's First Amendment. But if you are caught burning the flag, you could get up to 1 year in prison." So, and for a very long time, the United States, we were probably one of very little countries that gave out no penalties, that allowed you to burn a flag without any penalties. Like a lot of countries, especially countries in Europe and other countries, if you burn the flag, that country's flag, you could be in prison. So we never had any type of law, state or federal, saying that you cannot burn the flag. But he just signed an executive order. He signed two. No, he signed one executive order on, burning the American flag. He signed two executive orders regarding a ban on no cash bail. So we're going to talk about it. Yes, we are. They pushing back only because they're Democrats. Yeah, but the hypocrisy. I do want to start off by saying thank you, Hella Mel, for the super chat. Yes, thank you so much for getting it started. And I do need to start a goal. Hi, Love Matters. Um, Jahan Jahan Jihan. I hope I'm spelling it right. And yeah, hi Sister T. So we're gonna talk about that. I'm gonna sprinkle in some migrant crises because Kilmar Garcia, his ass is about to be deported to Uganda, and he was crying. He was upset. Listen, I think it's better for you to go to Uganda, honey, than it is for you to go to El Salvador. But his lawyer is saying, listen, he get deported to these countries. It's not like he's not going to prison in these other countries. But they're trying to get him to a country where he could get refugee status, and they're looking into Costa Rica. So that's not really a punishment. Oh, I see the judge, honey. Hi, how are you?
All right,
Good evening.
let's launch.
Oh, let me set this up here. And I think I'm on being on time and I'm not. Okay, here we go. Um, okay. All right. So Okay, let's just get into it. I want to start off with the burning of the flag because Trump signed two executive orders today, and I do want to play the clip. One of the executive orders prosecuting burning of the American flag. And I said, I don't have a problem with this. Do you?
Oh, me?
Yes.
It's been done quite frequently. It was quite a popular fad in the late 60s. So the Supreme Court has ruled on it. Maybe
Saying
they
what?
changed their ruling. So essentially, it's a First Amendment expression.
Okay, so this is Trump today talking about that.
Lastly, sir, this is an executive order on flag burning. It charges your attorney general.
Would you listen to this? This is very important. Flag burning. All over the country, they're burning flags. All over the world, they burn the American flag. And as you know, through a very sad court, I guess it was a 5-4 decision, they called it freedom of speech. But there's another reason, which is perhaps much more important. It's called death. Because what happens when you burn a flag is the area goes crazy. If you have hundreds of people, they go crazy. You could do other things. You can burn this piece of paper. You can, but when you burn the American flag, it incites riots at levels that we've never seen before. People go crazy. In a way, both ways. There are some that are going crazy for doing it. There are others that are angry about them doing it. Do you want to discuss that?
Sure. So what the executive order does, sir, it charges your Department of Justice with investigating instances of flag burning, and then where there's evidence of criminal activity, where prosecution wouldn't fall afoul of the First Amendment, and instructs the Department of Justice to prosecute those who are engaged in these instances of flag burning.
And what the penalty is going to be, if you burn a flag, you get 1 year in jail. No early exits, no nothing. You get 1 year in jail. If you burn a flag, you get, and what it does is incite to riot. I hope they use that language, by the way. Did they?
Yeah, incitement is.
Incite to riot. And you burn a flag, you get 1 year in jail. You don't get 10 years, you don't get 1 month. You get 1 year in jail, and it goes on your record. And you will see flag burning stopping immediately, just like when I signed the Statute and Monument Act. 10 years in jail if you hurt any of our beautiful monuments. Everybody left town. They were gone. Never had a problem after that. It's pretty amazing. We stopped it. But this is something that's, I don't know, in a certain way, it's equally as important. Some people would say it's more important. Because the people in this country don't want to see our American flag burned and spit on. And by people that are, in many cases, paid agitators. They're paid by the radical left to do it. You talk to these people, they don't even know, half of them don't even know what they're doing. They say, I don't know, they gave me money to do this. I see the same things that you do. They're bad people. They're trying to destroy a nation. That's not working, because I think our nation now is the most respected nation anywhere in the world, by far. You saw that with the European leaders on Friday. You saw that with NATO, where they agreed to go from 2% no pay to 5% fully paid up. Trillions of dollars paid, where they respect your president to a level that they jokingly call me the president of Europe. They call me the president of Europe, which is an honor. I like Europe, and I like those people. They're good people. They're great leaders. And we've never had a case where 7 plus really 28, essentially 38 countries were represented here the other day. 38 European countries were represented. European and other countries were represented. And it was a great meeting. But your country is respected again. I say it all the time. 1 year ago, our country was dead. Everybody said it. We had a dead country. We were not going to survive. Now we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. So it's an honor to be involved. And this group has a lot to do with it, right behind me. Does anybody behind me have...
So, any thoughts on it?
nice political theater, but flag burning is not as hot a topic as it once was. Used to happen quite frequently. And a lot bigger fuss was made about it one way or the other. They aren't as prone to public disturbances as they once used to be. There was a popular war going on. The Black Power movement was going on. The Brown Berets were doing their thing. Students for Democratic Society were doing their thing. It was a pretty volatile era. And actually, it'll work itself out. It's just that criminalizing thought, even if it's accompanied by physical self-expression, actually, see, most of the time it's not really talking about pulling a flag down off of a flagpole. It's an item that somebody has acquired the property interest in, and
Mm-hmm.
what you do with your own personal property, as long as it's not likely to start a conflagration, and the caveat of proving that there was an intent to incite a riot by getting those in opposition riled up enough to behave in a disorderly fashion. That might
Well,
generate some problems when it came to proof, and also it's subject to abuse because I know what the motives are from the mega side, but once you put the law out there,
mhm.
remember you are leaving it out there, and there are others with different motives who might take advantage of the new statutes for different purposes. That's like the thing I said about hate crimes. They have a nasty habit of coming back and biting the intended beneficiaries within about 2 decades. So, yeah,
So
it's
mhm. It says here on the executive order in section 2, measures to combat desecration of the
desecration. Yes.
American flag, the Attorney General shall prioritize the enforcement to the fullest extent possible of our nation's criminal and civil laws against acts of American flag desecration that violate applicable content neutral laws while causing harm unrelated to expression consistent with the
In other
First
words,
Amendment.
you incite a riot.
So as long as you don't, so if you burn the flag but you don't incite a riot, that's you won't be locked up.
Yeah, but the point is when are you doing that with the intent of inciting a riot that gets stopped before the riot starts, and when are you doing it with the intent to just express something? So it is one of those things that puts one more ambiguity out there, and it's dangerous. Those who haven't actually dealt with it before may applaud
Right.
one way or the other, but there are some inherent dangers. Like, for example, let me give you one that was this popular in law schools, or at least it used to be. An attempt to shoot the president is, of course, illegal, right? What if somebody puts up a cardboard poster of the president, and somebody drives down the roadway and shoots up the cardboard poster? If the person exercises their Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, do you know if they were mistaken in attempting to shoot a real president, or they knew it was a cardboard poster? If you put it in a situation where he has to break his Fifth Amendment rights and tell you, I was shooting at a cardboard poster, then you have problems with how you deal with the constitutionality of the rest of your law. So you see the problem. does somebody mistake this cardboard silhouette for the real thing and attempt to kill somebody for real, or do they know it's only a picture?
Hmm. So, in other words, let me throw this as an example. If you know how you have protesters and then you have the National Guard facing the protesters, and then, or people protesting, and over here on the side, you have a group of people burning the flag. And in the midst of all this protest, a riot breaks out and it's all caught on film. So now the feds, the federal government can say, we're going to arrest people who participated in the riots and those that were burning a flag during the riot.
Okay, now you know where you go with that. You could have arrested everybody for taking part in a civil rights demonstration if they caused some Southerners to decide that they were going to take it out on the protesters for protesting their lack of civil rights. In other words, you take the person who's exercising his or her or their collective First Amendment rights to assemble and protest for redress of grievance. If that excites others who don't want them to have the rights they're seeking to retaliate by attempting to oppress them, then the logic of this allows the people who are protesting to be arrested because they're causing those who
Disturbances.
don't like it to be provoked, you see. So you will put yourself in a situation where exercising a constitutional right, if it provokes somebody else into retaliating, then the person who exercises the constitutional rights would be guilty of a crime.
So basically, do you think that this executive order for no more burning the American flag is just theater production? Because it's going to get messy,
It's
and
going to get very messy because you still have this thing. They didn't make burning the flag per se a crime, but burning the flag where it incites others to riot or engage in public disorder to protest the flag burning becomes illegal,
Mhm.
or burning the flag to get others to engage in riots that support the burning of the flag would be illegal. So it's a two-part test: burning the flag and then the intent to incite public disorder by the burning of the flag. So you run into the problem with the Fifth Amendment considerations when you put it that way. So let's see what happens. It ought to make interesting law and something for future first year law students to get into if they still study con law. Right
Mhm.
now, they really aren't, but
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
really, they aren't. What they call con law now in the law school is primarily directed at conflict of laws between one state and another where a big mega corporation is doing business. They focus on con law with taxation and things like that rather than as it applies to individual citizens. They don't study that because it's not about money. And today the profession has gotten skewed into a business and less concerned with those things that keep this republic reasonably friendly to people having rights and personal liberty and freedom.
Interesting. Well, here's another executive order that he signed today. Um, Measure to end cashless bail and enforce the law in the District of Columbia is that. And then it's also taking steps to end cashless bail to protect Americans, right? So,
Okay, where this whole thing started is not long ago, there was a bastardized switch in terminology. 20 years ago, you said cashless bail, and somebody would be talking about an ROR, release on your own recognizance. In other words, somebody is of sufficient character and connection to the community so you don't have to put up a bail amount that he has to make, and to bond himself out, he'll show back up. Most people are familiar with that kind of situation when they sign off on a traffic ticket. It promises that you, in lieu of arrest, will appear in court to handle the matter, so they don't take you into custody. See, for most traffic offenses, they're actually subject to physical arrest, but when you sign that ticket, you are agreeing that in lieu of the police arresting you and taking you to jail in handcuffs, you will show up on your own. That's what we used to think of. And then the far left started doing this propaganda thing as it somehow or another was discriminatory because people in better circumstances could get bonds made that the poor couldn't. But I never particularly noted that there was a caste or class thing on bonds, because you'd get people that for 4 generations nobody in the family has a visible income, but they managed to post a bond because somebody's built up credit with a bail bonding company, and they put up 10% of what the bond is the premium for the bonding company, making itself liable for the bond. Put up a $25,000 surety bond, and that meant you had to put up $2,500 to the bonding company. That was their 10%. And they made the $2,500. But if the defendant didn't show, they'd send out a bounty hunter to go get them. And from an 1877 act of, well, not act, but ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court, a bounty hunter armed with the outstanding warrant or capias, which happens when somebody's been indicted, they have the right under American law to cross state lines while armed and to physically take somebody into custody and act as police and arrest somebody using firearms if necessary. And it was always interesting when a bonding company wanted a forfeiture set aside, and they would describe what they went through to take the defendant into custody who had jumped bail. There were interesting shootouts, and there was one that took place in a sewer that could have been a scene in a movie that I listened to. So, yeah, all kinds of things happen.
Well, here's the thing though, because one of the reasons why he issued this, I believe, because if you remember, under the Biden administration, they got rid of
In
the
other words, you didn't have to post anything else, anything at all to get out. And you didn't have to qualify as a good citizen with sufficient ties to the community to
and then
be
what
released
happened?
on your own recognizance.
And
Somebody's charged with robbery, so they just let them go. Come back to court. No bond, no investigation, no nothing. That's absolutely ridiculous. Like in some municipal areas, if it's shoplifting and it's under $1,000, we can't be bothered. Just let them go,
and
which
as a
is kind
result,
of crazy.
of that, crime doubled.
Yeah, it's gone up because there are no consequences. See, it's like I went into one of these discount hardware stores, the big kind, the mega kind.
Mhm.
And a couple of years ago, all of this stuff, you looked on the wall, saw what you want, take your box, put it in your cart, and go up front, or put it on the trolley and push it up front. Now you have to get an attendant because people were loading up carts and just running out the front door, and the employees were instructed not to go attempt to arrest the shoplifters, even though the amounts in question would be felonies, because if you got them, go downtown and they'd let them go, nonviolent. but the grocery stores, the hardware stores, the shopping centers closed down, and nobody has any place to go because, well, we whoopee. Nobody's going to get arrested for stealing, so you get this thing together. Let's go steal in mass from this place, and you steal a crippling amount of inventory from someplace, and it closes down saying, hey, we can't stay in business. And everybody says they have no right to close down this store. And it becomes, well, one of the favorite terms, what was it, food desert? Because the major grocery stores closed down due to the losses from shoplifting.
Mhm, mhm.
Wine, wine, wine. We can't shop anymore. Well, why didn't you talk to your neighbors about not ripping the place off shoplifting? I used to get calls, Judge, is there anything we can do? I mean, my uncle told me to call you. He knows you. Yeah, who's your uncle? Yeah, I know him. Well, what's the problem? I'm the manager at this grocery store, and we just can't sustain the losses. We just arrested a woman and had the police come take this woman into custody. She's got 11 pending shopliftings at our store. We can't continue this way.
I want to play this clip here because it says Trump threatens to pull funding from areas offering cashless bail.
President Trump's crackdown on crime is now going after cashless bail. Today, the president signed an executive order that threatens to pull federal funding from cities that don't eliminate such policies. Among those cities is the nation's capital.
One of the executive orders has to do with cashless bail. That was when the big crime in this country started. And I can tell you who did it, when, but I don't want to do that because others followed pretty quickly. But that was when it happened. Somebody kills somebody, they go in, don't worry about it, no cash, come back in a couple of months, we'll give you a trial. You never see the person again. And this isn't Republican, Democrat. This is, and by the way, most Democrats agree with this. But this is just, we got to bring.
I mean, it's like, I think it is a bankrupt policy not to either investigate and determine good citizenship that merits a release on own recognizance as a bond, and just simply saying, we're not going to investigate. You just can come back when come back on this date. You don't have to put up either a cash bond or a surety bond.
Mm-hmm.
Most surety bonds are backed by major insurance companies. So in other words, if the defendant doesn't show up, the bonding company is given a capias is issued, and a date is set wherein the bonding company has to bring the defendant in on or before that date, or they have to pay the amount of the bond as a forfeiture to the clerk of the court. And what they do when that occurs is they send bounty hunters out to find the guy.
Our country back.
Let's talk about this with civil rights attorney Robin Sanders, who is a federal public defender. Robin, Trump says cashless bail, that was when the big crime in this country started. They'd kill someone and get out. Can you tell us how cashless bail impacts crime?
Sure. So I think it's important for your viewers to understand that cashless bail, also known as no cash bail, is a system where judges will allow individuals to be released before trial and not condition that on their ability to pay a sum of money. And what typically happens is that the judge will engage in a risk assessment analysis and look at various factors like whether the person poses.
Stop. That is not what is done. That's what happens when somebody does the background investigation, has a formal hearing on whether or not this person will require a bond being posted, either cash, surety, or released on their own recognizance. That's not what we're talking about. And this young lady hasn't been practicing law long enough, isn't old enough to know the difference because she never experienced it. So you have inexperience speaking from a point of ignorance right here, and that's not the way it works. She's talking about some of the judges who have hearings to determine the fitness. That is what you engage in when you're talking about release on own recognizance. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about when down at the city jail, down at the county jail, somebody's taken in before anything happens, before any hearing is had, somebody just automatically releases the person as a matter of policy without having to post a bond or being determined to be likely to show up and fit for a release on own recognizance.
Okay.
A flight risk or whether they are a danger to the community before determining if they should be released before trial. And the impetus for this is rooted in civil rights concerns. Brianna, proponents of this policy say that if you don't have it in existence, what you'd have is a two-tiered system where wealthy individuals who are charged with the same offense will be able to be released pre-trial.
Stop. She's speaking from a position of complete ignorance. Now, I have had people, haven't you been in front of the court before, ma'am or sir? Well, yes, sir. You've had 3 charges, right? We have a background on you and you're trying to speak up for this person. And what you have is somebody making a $50,000 or $100,000 bond, and all of the sureties on the bond who signed off with the bonding company, none of them have ever had a job. But they have good credit with the bonding company because on small bonds over the last 15 to 20 years, that family has a good credit rating with the bonding companies, as always ensuring that the people show back up because grandmother's rundown house is up and we don't want granny out in the street, a big mama out in the street. So I'm looking at, okay, these folk are technically flat broke, busted. Most of them are getting Section 8 or public assistance, but they can post a $100,000 bond. So it's always amazing when you look at it, and she's just ignorant. She's new at this, so she doesn't know.
But indigent individuals in this country, disproportionately African Americans and people of color, would have to remain in prison or in jail before their trial.
So under threat of losing federal funding.
Stop. I've had clients, man, they got you again. Yeah, Lawyer Joe, Lawyer Brown, they got me, man. You know, like, man, this is the 4th or 5th case you've had in the last 6 months. Yeah, man, you know, like, hey, but you know, my daddy's mama, she putting the money up for this one, you know, like, but ain't that lady collecting a Social Security? Yeah, she getting disability. Well, she's supposed to put that, well, you know, we do things, man, you know. So what kind of drug dealer is out there selling heavy dope and he doesn't have cash to put up to 10% on a bond? You ain't a fit drug dealer because you're not good at what you're doing. See, if you were good at your criminal activity, you have the money to put the bond up. The poor sap who is a first offender, no, he's not going to have it. Or if he's a repeat offender, what the devil is he doing being a repeat offender if he's flat broke busted? He's a failure at the crime. But you see, that kind of person that gets out on ROR is one thing. But the problem we have is the people that need the high bonds because of the long rap sheets, they have the money to get out. It has nothing to do with your visible income. It's got to do with how do you earn a living, man? I'm a criminal, man.
I see what you're saying. Let me play a little bit more.
We've seen many entities and jurisdictions enacting policies that otherwise they would not enact. Do you expect this to work? And if so, what's the effect of that going to be?
So I think that it's important to understand that part of the order is national in scope. So it authorizes the U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi to identify jurisdictions that implement this policy and see whether or not there are federal funding streams that could be withheld or revoked. And then, of course, targeting D.C. specifically. And essentially that would allow the police to preferentially charge suspects under federal law, thereby bypassing that procedure. So I think what we will need to look at is to see whether states or jurisdictions will comply with the order, in order to prevent themselves from losing federal funding.
So I know you come at this from a defender's perspective, and you have a lot of experience with a number of cases, but you also know that there are people who are incredibly worried about crime and public safety, even as we, for instance, in D.C. have seen numbers go down recently. The administration is certainly playing to those concerns. How should those concerns be addressed?
Time out. Crime in terms of the acts that constitute crime has not gone down. That is a far leftist lie. A lot of what was previously reported is no longer reported, so it looks like crime's going down. Various police departments, including the one right here in Memphis, Shelby County, have been ordered to not report certain crimes, which, when an investigation is done, are shown to result in false statistics. Now, the next thing is, I'm saying this is a rookie. I ran the public defender's office. I was head public defender in Memphis when it still had criminal jurisdiction. It's been 50 years ago, not quite 50 years ago, 48 years ago. So I've been where she's been, but I was the boss, not somebody that was working under me like she's working under somebody. And I know how limited my experience was 48 years ago compared to what it is now. So she's just with her. I appreciate her enthusiasm, but she's young and dumb and she doesn't know.
She's not dumb.
Well, she's dumb is when, if you had the information.
You can see she's inexperienced or biased or one side.
No, it's just you don't know. In other words, it's like taking somebody 3-4 years out of law school and you put them up against the Johnny Cochran. It's going to be a slaughter. Or somebody like me, it's a slaughter. Or somebody like Willie Gary, it's a slaughter. Because they come forth and they're presenting themselves as an authority when we are looking at it as you're young and dumb and you have no idea. That's like, I just got out, I won my bouts in the Olympics, so I'm going to take on Muhammad Ali. Okay. Or I'm going to whip Joe Frazier. Okay. Or I'm going to beat George Foreman. And we're talking about when they're in their prime. Or I'm going to beat Mike Tyson.
I don't think she's not. I get what you're saying, but she's not talking about that.
Yeah, but she hasn't got that background of
experience. She's a civil rights attorney, so
she's not old enough.
Okay.
See, what it is
the video.
No, but see, the point is, look at her. She's a child. So the point is, when you talk about somebody being these things, they have a lot of gray hair. I don't see gray hair. And I don't see wrinkles, the character wrinkles you get from maturity in life. So you're not only learning experience in the practice of law, you're wise in the ways of the world.
Are you telling me that you didn't become a good lawyer or judge until you were older? And
let's put it this way. See, what you do as a good lawyer is more akin to being a good coach. What you can do on the initial front end is you have aptitude and talent. Most good trial lawyers have it from the front end, but you give them 15 years experience, 20 years experience, and they are a hell of a lot different in terms of what they can accomplish than 5 years out of law school. Now,
let me finish playing it. I'm going to finish playing the rest of this video. Let me finish playing the rest of this video.
Yeah.
It's only a minute.
So I think it's important for people to understand that even in places where cashless bail, the system is being implemented and used, judges are still required to engage in a risk assessment analysis. So in addition to determining whether someone is a flight risk, judges also look to see whether the
Stop it. This is what I'm talking about. She lacks the
It's only
experience.
less than a minute. Let
No,
it
hold
finish.
on.
It's only less
I
than a
don't
minute.
want this to think into somebody's head
Well, why
so
can't
they
you say
walk
it
out of here
after the video
psychologically with
ends?
the wrong understanding. This is what I'm talking about when I say dumb. She has not been exposed to enough jurisdictions to realize that what she's talking about is not the practice in too many of them. This is conducting an investigation to determine whether or not somebody should be, in essence, released on their own recognizance. That's not what we're talking about, where a judge does the evaluation. It's just where, as a matter of policy, if you're charged with something of a certain felonious nature, but not so serious, you don't have to put up a bond. There's nobody having a
All right,
hearing. There's
it's
no group making an assessment.
all right, it's less than a minute.
Okay.
individual does pose a significant threat or danger to the community before making a decision about whether they would be released pre-trial. So it's important for people to understand that even in jurisdictions where this system is adopted, judges are still tasked with making sure that the individual who is wanting the benefit of the cashless bail policy doesn't pose a significant risk or danger to the community. And if they are determined to pose that risk, then the judge will consign them to jail, as they await their trial proceedings. So it's a factor that judges consider.
That's so much bullshit on the big scale, because that's not what the problem is. Some judge is taking the personal responsibility and accepting the accountability for making an assessment that somebody's likely to pose a low risk of flight. If that were the case, what would be going on is A, either the person is locked up, or B, they qualified for ROR release. Now, everybody does not qualify for ROR release, though they might qualify for a reasonable bond being set. So what's going on right now is, are you going up and saying this person's going to show back up because of their character and community connections? Yes, that would be nice. But everybody who is coming through the system does not qualify for that. So the Constitution says there shall be a reasonable bond, and that's long been interpreted as meaning just enough to ensure that you're likely to show up for the proceedings to be completed. Now, that's not what we're talking about here. This is a liberal talking point. This is CNN garbage here, where it is being put out to the American public. So when they get the real thing thrown at them, oh no, the judges evaluate these people to see if they're flight risk. That's not the problem. That's not the problem at all. And then what happened?
Here, let me also include this, and that's not what has been going on, because particularly in the state of New Jersey, under the Biden administration, when they implemented this no cash bail, crime did go up, and what they were doing, especially with the illegal migrant influx, if people would get arrested, they would give them a court date with the promise that you're going to show up. And then you will be determined if you're going to get locked up or not, or whatever. But they will get locked up and probably stay locked up for a day or two, give them a court date, and release them.
Yeah, but see, that's
And
not even.
And then also what was happening, those said people that were being released under the with a court date, they will go out and commit more crimes before their court date.
Yeah. Now, what I'm talking about, what the issue is not what the federal courts do. It's what the state courts do. See, the feds can't nominally determine what bond is set, how much, and what the circumstances are for a state court. That's the state's business. Because if it's a state charge, it's the people of the state of New Jersey versus John Doe, or the state of Tennessee versus, yeah. Now, what they are talking about is you pay the cost, you can be the boss. If the state is getting federal funds, then
Mhm.
what you can do is, if you choose to implement this policy, which is your business, then our business says we'll cut off the money for certain things.
Mhm.
So if you want to lose the money, go right ahead.
Pull your phone up a little bit. It's just cutting your head off a
I
little.
set up.
Let me just I usually don't take questions unless it's a form of a super chat, but this is from X. Ricky Slander says, maybe there's some type of money laundering going on with the bell. Do you think?
No, 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 no. See, there's no bail going up at all. In other words, I get somebody who's got 8, 9 felony arrests, and as a matter of policy in this particular city, typically blue with blue judges, if it's amount of theft less than 2,500, he just gets told when to come back. You come
Mhm.
back on October 2nd, or you come back next week for arraignment, and that's it. Now, what would usually happen is, if this guy is a first offender, or he maybe had 1 or 2 minor cases and he showed up and he's got a job at one of the local factories, and he's got 3 children and he's been living at this address for 11 years, okay, you can set a release on recognizance bond. Or if the person may have some family connection, you have a choice between setting $100,000 bond or maybe one for 25,000. So if he's got a connection, you say 25,000, but he's not been a good guy, but he shows back up.
Mhm.
So that's assuring that the guy shows up. Now, if he doesn't, then the cash bail is lost. Or if a bonding company put up the money, they got their 10%, but they lose 10 times that much if the client doesn't show up. So they send a bounty hunter out after him, and he captures him down in Louisiana somewhere, outside of the bayou on the way to Baton Rouge. So you get the guy brought back to your state anyway, and you can continue the state's interest in prosecution until the matter is completed. That is not the same as just saying we're going to let this guy go. This is his
Mhm.
seventh or eighth offense, but it's only in this case $2,400. Or in another state, it may be he just hijacked the car, carjacked somebody. So this is only his second time. Nobody got shot, so we'll just let him go. See.
So I want to move on to the National Guard crisis, right? I'm going to National Guard crisis, National Guard showdown. But before I do, guys, I want everyone, please hit the like button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, and please share this video on all of your social media outlets. Share, share, share on X. Please repost. And if you have a question or a comment, I do have a goal. So send in a super chat and help me reach my goal. So National Guard. uh, let me share this here.
Let
Well, it
me give
says,
one caveat here. National Guard units are entities of the state, but under the Constitution, if a state has a military instrument, it has to be subject to nationalization to be legal. So if it is nationalized, then the president becomes the commander in chief. So it's not like he's sending in the 82nd Airborne or the 101st Air Mobile Division. What he is doing is he's taking a state institution which under constitutional law comes under his command authority, and he's saying, okay, this is the United States of America. There are people from all over the 50 state spread of the United States who may pass through this particular state or this city engaged in interstate commerce. If the
mhm,
locals can't guarantee safety to these people who may pass through, then the feds can step in to guarantee it. So if there is a breakdown in law and order, You don't just have to sit back and say, oh, everything's being burnt down and everything is gone to the devil. Well, the governor didn't call anybody in, the mayor didn't call anybody in, but you've got 70 years of precedence from Orville Faubus saying, as governor of Arkansas, I'm not going to follow the law. And President Eisenhower saying, oh, you're not? Well, guess what? I'm going to nationalize your National Guard. And in addition, I am going to send in the 101st Airborne, which he did. So he restored law and order.
So I want to share this here. It says Maryland Governor Wes Moore just announced he will not bend the knee to Trump and refuses to authorize National Guard deployment in Maryland. And let me just play this one of many
Orville
clips.
Faubus.
Why, though, are you so opposed to this deployment?
Well, there's plenty of reasons. One, it is not sustainable. You cannot continue this type of pace of operations, particularly when it's costing over $1 million a day in order to do this. The second, it's not scalable. You're not going to be able to do this in every single major American city, particularly when many of the cities that have the highest crime rates are the places that have actually deployed their National Guards to Washington, D.C. So who's going to go do the work in their cities? The third, it's unconstitutional. It's a direct violation of the 10th Amendment. And for a party that talks about state rights, it's amazing how they're having such a big government approach in the way they're conducting public safety. The fourth reason is because it's deeply disrespectful to the members of the National Guard. As someone who actually deployed overseas and served my country in combat, to ask these men and women to do a job that they're not trained for is just deeply disrespectful. And so when we're thinking about all of these lasting factors, when we're thinking about the fact that it serves as a distraction from the fact that the president's disastrous economic policies are making everything more expensive for everyday Americans and making life harder for everyday Americans, there is a multitude of reasons that I am against this, and I will not authorize the Maryland National Guard to be utilized.
Oh, well, thank you for your service in the military, but shame on you for your abysmal ignorance. 1957, Governor Orville Wallace of Arkansas said, we're not going to follow this. He has no right to do this, but he did. And he was upheld by the American appellate courts on the federal level. So that's 1957. How long ago has that been? That's almost 70 years. That's 68 years ago. So the precedent's out there. And that wasn't the first time that happened. A lot of Southern governors did that during Reconstruction. And President Ulysses Simpson Grant, U.S. Grant, unconditional surrender Grant, Civil War commander of the military of the Union, sent in the troops.
Well,
So
Trump did reply to Wes Moore, and he slams Governor Morse, says he might have to rethink money given for Baltimore's Key Bridge. And President Trump criticized Maryland Governor Wes Moore on Sunday for asking the president to come walk the streets with us, saying he needs to rethink his decision to give money for the bridge that collapsed in Baltimore after being struck by a cargo ship. Trump suggested last week that he could bring his takeover efforts to other Democratic-led cities, including Baltimore, which he called in his Truth Social post out of control, crime ridden. And so this is what Trump actually posted on his Truth Social. Governor Wes Moore of Maryland has asked in a rather nasty and provocative tone that I walk the streets of Maryland with him. I assume he is talking about out of control, crime ridden Baltimore. As president, I much prefer that he clean up this crime disaster before I go there for a walk. Wes Moore's record on crime is very bad. It's a very bad one, unless he fudges his figures on crime like many other blue states are doing. But if Wes Moore needs help, like Gavin Newsom did in LA, I will send in the troops, which is being done in nearby DC, and quickly clean up the crime. After only 1 week, there is no crime and no murder in DC. When it is like that in Baltimore, I will probably walk the streets with the failing because of crime. Governor of Maryland, P.S. Baltimore is ranked the fourth worst city in the nation in crime and murder. Stop talking and get to work, West. I'll see you on the streets. Also, I give Westmore a lot of money to fix his demolished bridge. I will now have to rethink that decision. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again, President DJT.
Yeah, well, there you go. You pay the cost to be the boss, and if he is the executive agency that can approve or disapprove the expenditure of the authorized funds, there you go. So again, you have to understand the difference between DC and everywhere else is DC is not part of any one of the 50 states. It is a separate district known as the District of Columbia. And it was ceded in terms of the land involved from Maryland to the federal government 200 and what is it, 30 some years ago.
Mhm.
1789. So it's been a long time, 236 years ago. So yeah, now it's under Congress, and until recently, it was exclusively under Congress. DC had no home rule until about, has it been that long ago? 4 decades ago, they granted limited home rule. And other than that, no. And by the way, what he's talking about, the governor, is basically these failed blue states that just have screwed up their mandate and can't seem to govern anything because they are not into maintaining order and direction. They just have no purpose except have a good time, enjoy yourself. You're entitled to everybody taking care of you without concern about how much you put back in. So
Well,
that's a bad thing.
I want to play this other clip because he went on Fox News to talk about possible National Guards coming into Maryland, specifically the city of Baltimore.
Program. Good morning, Governor. Thanks so much for joining the program.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, Governor, I'm so glad you decided to come on the program. I know you care about your community, and I care about mine as well. And I'm hoping that we can get to some resolutions on how we can come together to make this happen. I want to bring you to one of your cities in your state, and you're a neighbor to Washington, D.C., and we know the actions that the president is taking right now. When you look at the numbers right now, the most dangerous cities list, Baltimore is on number 4 of that. And when it comes to the murders, it's number 3. Now, I know you have been surging resources to Baltimore, investing in the police there, but you don't like the actions that the president is taking right now. Why?
Well, when I came in, I said that the number one priority that we had as administration was to make sure that our communities were safe. Before I became governor, for the 8 years before I became the governor, Baltimore City went 8 straight years of 300 plus homicides. The year before I became the governor, Baltimore City averaged about a homicide a day. And I said, I refuse to be a governor who's going to spend my time offering eulogies and giving thoughts and prayers, that we actually need to have resources and coordination that was going to help to fundamentally address the problem. As people of my state have learned, I don't come from a political background. My background is I'm a soldier. And so what we did was we made historic investments in local law enforcement, that we invested over $50 million in the Baltimore City Police Department alone, that we made historic investments in technologies and predictive analytics, and saying if someone commits a violent crime, particularly with a firearm, I want them in handcuffs in 24 hours. And saying that we made historic investments in our community groups, working with the mayor, working with our county executives, working with the community groups in our violence, that now that the last time the homicide rate was this low in Baltimore City, I was not born yet. So we're making real progress where Maryland is now amongst the fastest dropping states in this country on violent crime. There's ways you can do this, and you have to be able to make sure you're using the right tool to get to the right result.
Mr. Governor,
lock
you're right,
up
y'all.
all of the good citizens who want to arm themselves for self-protection and protection of their families and their fellow citizens. That's bad. See, that's what he's talking about. Baltimore, I've been in Baltimore in the last 2 years. It's a shithole. they've got fentanyl zombies standing out in the middle of the street with drool around their feet, and they haven't moved, even though they've been bent halfway over like they're trying to touch their toes for an hour. And it's just horrible. You see filth and overgrown yards in some areas. It's a real live mess. So, yeah,
Well, I
that's an
guess.
absolute failure.
Well, I guess because he's looking at, well, you know, on a state level, the crime is decreasing on a state level, you know, maybe slowly but surely. Baltimore was another sanctuary city as well, and I believe the state of Maryland probably is too. That's pretty much a that's a blue state, part of that blue wall. But even if it's been decreasing, right, which is great, when Trump, if he comes in, it's going to decrease drastically. The selling of drugs will probably be obsolete. Selling of guns, gangs. So it's more of a sending in the National Guards. I look at it as more of, what do you call it? An acute action. To whereas, okay, if your crime is decreasing by 5% annually, well, I send the National Guards in, that crime going to decrease probably by 50-60% overnight.
Yeah, well, look at
So what do you prefer? What do you prefer?
Tennessee? Knoxville, Chattanooga, Knoxville, Nashville, the places that are not run by the Democratic Party, they don't have an excessive rate of homicide. But Memphis leads that whole list as number 1 in the nation and number 10 in the whole world in violence.
Right.
Now, here's what is really going on. The truth of the matter is there is a drop in non-homicidal criminality, but spontaneous, senseless violence, particularly homicide, has drastically ramped up. In other words, stuff like bank robbery, to an extent, that's gone down. Stuff like auto theft, that hasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like burglaries might have gone down. Stuff like larceny might have dropped down. The stuff like forgery and embezzlement has dropped drastically because you can do it online in a fashion more safe to the perpetrator. So the net has absorbed a lot of the intentional felonious behavior that wasn't particularly of a violent nature, but senseless, random, spontaneous violence has gone way up. That's what we are concerned with, whether or not it's safe for you to walk down the street without getting done in. That thing you sent me, that ridiculous thing where the fool went back there with the gun, came out and wanted to fire a shot.
Can we talk about that towards the end? Yeah, because I want to give context to that. We'll talk about that towards the end of the show.
Yeah, but see, that's the kind of violence that needs to be cut back. That kind of stuck on stupid violence that's going on.
Yeah. Well, I want to play this clip because this news reporter, he brought up a valid point to what the mayor of Baltimore said, right, pertaining to one of the residents who she can't sell her home because they're selling drugs. The drug dealers are selling drugs in her neighborhood and threatening to hurt her.
Yeah, so what is she supposed to do about this?
So I want
this fool saying, oh, well, crime's down. There's no real need to call in anybody. Everything's under control. Hell, I can't sell my house.
Right. So I want to play that clip here.
Have made progress, but there's still some issues there. And this is a resident, and this is what they said in the Baltimore Sun. A 77-year-old woman from Curtis Bay who asked to remain anonymous due to threat levels she's received from drug dealers on her block, compared the morning drug traffic to a fast food drive-thru. When a real estate agent assessed her property about a month ago and a half, she said that the agent told her he can't sell this house with that, referring to the 10 or 12 people involved in the drug market, loitering across the street. I'm going to get hurt one day. I know I am, she said. But the mayor responded this way, Governor.
I'm sure you read the article in the Baltimore Sun yesterday talking about how so many Baltimore residents don't recognize their neighborhoods anymore. What do you say to those residents of Baltimore who may think that citing falling crime statistics glosses over some of the harsher day-to-day realities and needs that they have to their lives in Baltimore, need for things to change even further in terms of just regular drug trafficking?
Yeah, so we're only having that discussion because the president is having that discussion. And this, I want to be very clear. I didn't read the Baltimore Sun article. I don't read it because they're a part of the president's propaganda machine.
Wait, now,
So, Mr. Governor,
time out. See how the guy on the left is dressed? Even the governor on the right, but thanks to Obama Tang boy, he's not in uniform. And the mayor of Baltimore looks like one of his local thugs. See that? That's just disrespectful to his city. And it's not that he's at home. He just doesn't show up anywhere with suit and tie on. Now, you can go to Beijing, China, and they've got themselves dressed like the guy on the left. You can go to Moscow, and the leadership is dressed like the guy on the left. You can go to London, they look like the guy on the left. Paris, Berlin.
We get it. Yes, we get it.
Yeah, you can go to Pretoria, South Africa.
Can we get back to the topic?
Yeah, but hold on. This is just an illustration of the kind of casual approach to everything. So what is supposed to happen when his city continues to be a shithole and all of the good American citizens living in his shithole can't get any relief from the lawlessness they have to deal with? What are they supposed to do? They're American citizens. So that means they're just supposed to sit there and suffer in silence while his incompetence goes la-di-da.
Good point. And that's what I'm saying. And what he did was dismiss that older woman, cry for help. So, and then she's not the only one. So she's just one of many who most likely having the same problem. I can't sell my home because the neighborhood is bad and we're being intimidated by drug dealers because, trying to have the police come in, we're being intimidated by drug dealers. So guess what? If the National Guard come in, them drug dealers not going to be nowhere in sight. They can't intimidate nothing. So again, you don't, just because it's one woman that gave her story to a news reporter, there's dozens other. And so for that mayor to just dismiss it or gloss over it as if it doesn't matter, that's a problem.
Of course it is. And that's what you get. The blue cities in America have just told the people that live there, you can go to hell. The people that are out of control, that are thugging out, turning our city, your city, into a shithole, they're more important than you are. So we'll let them do whatever in the hell they want to do. Meanwhile, you guys just put up with it. We feel we're doing fine. So what does he mean when he dares to suggest sending in the National Guard or naturalizing the National Guard and putting it under his command authority like the Constitution says he can? So what does he mean? Why does he dare do that when we say things are fine just because a few of you people are out there suffering from lawlessness? That's not our problem. It's more important that everybody feel like they're doing what they want to do. Now,
Trump did say, and I want to play this clip here. He did say he will send the National Guards to red states as well.
On the National Guard, you've talked a lot about Democratic-run cities and states. Would you also consider sending the National Guard into red states and red cities that are also seeing high crime?
Sure, but there aren't that many of them. If you look at the top 25 cities that for crime, just about every one of those cities is run by Democrats. And you know, one of the bad things they did, cashless bail, if you look back on time, when they allowed a murderer out that afternoon, you know, he'd kill somebody and then a couple of hours later he's walking the streets again, oftentimes killing again rapidly. Cashless bail is a disaster. You saw we had a news conference today on that. We're wiping it out in D.C., immediately wiping it out. It started in New York, I must tell you, and it's been a horrible thing for crime, especially violent crime. So we're going to end cashless bail, yes.
By the way, D.C. can't even operate as a moderately medium-sized city. Can you see it being granted statehood?
No, but see, here's the thing too, because he said that he will send the National Guard into red states. Memphis is one of them, Tennessee, Ohio. The governor of Ohio said, yeah, we welcome the National Guards. Yes, if you want to send them in. So red states have an issue as well. Now,
and it looks stupid because the entirety of the state of Tennessee is red with the exception of the far western corner, which is blue, and a little fringe around that that's kind of purple.
now is Memphis sanctuary city off the books, or you know, do they still try to harbor illegal migrants in Memphis,
What they're
Tennessee?
trying to do is this: they're trying to bring in Blue Oval and take over Mason, Tennessee, which has 5,280 residents last count. They want to stuff that up to 250,000 because they're bringing in already, they've hired 15,000 people, but from South Korea. So they want to bring in 15,000 South Koreans plus their families and bring in another 5,000 or so, which will ramp this up to maybe 125,000 people from South Korea will be coming to the Memphis area to take over what is essentially an 80% black township, Mason, and turn it into an international place where a foreign corporation is going to get a lot of deference and quite a few $1 billion worth of value when they convert a water line and a sewage line going out there at the expense of Memphis, Tennessee, which will get absolutely nothing out of it. And Memphis is 75% black. So here are black people being hurt by this black administration down here that has a corner on the misappropriation of public funds, on the money under the table, the graft, and the bribery and extortion. So, yeah, Tennessee really needs to have the troops sent in because this place, Memphis, is out of control. Fortunately, Tennessee has a constitutional carry thing, so I find it interesting. The thugs don't like to come out to the more affluent suburbs because they're worried about one of the more affluent residents shooting them. See, in other words, down in the hood, you know, you either a gangster and that goes along with that old thing, or you're just a victim.
Right.
You come out the other way and they teach their wives how to shoot. They take classes in gunplay and, well, gun usage and the rights and the laws, and they go to the range on a regular basis. And instead of us doing that, we go out and buy some Air Jordans or some Nikes, or, you know, go out and buy some of the gaudy stuff that makes you look like you got a flag. Hey, bust me, I'm going to be a crook. And then you've got a police department that has some very fine personnel, but they have zero leadership at the very top. And they're infiltrated by the street gangs. So it's a real poisonous situation, and we badly need somebody to come in and restore order, because you saw that list. Baltimore was number 4.
Yeah.
Memphis is number 1 on that list.
Yeah, they definitely, the National Guards need to come in Memphis and Chicago. And listen, there are these black people, these predominantly black cities, these black people want the National Guard to come in.
Yes.
Majority of the residents are working residents. They, they have family, so they don't want crime. Now let's go to Chicago, because
With this city.
Chicago, this mayor, the mayor and the governor had a press conference, and this is some of what the mayor is talking about.
As the mayor of this city, I can tell you that Chicagoans are not calling for a military occupation. They are calling for the same thing that we've been calling for some time, and that's investment. What safe cities across America all have in common, they invest in people, and that's what we're doing in Chicago. We need the federal resources to make sure that we're building more affordable housing, expanding mental and behavioral health care, education, all of these things that could reduce crime and provide real community safety. Instead of spending hundreds of millions of dollars for a publicity stunt to invoke chaos and terror, the federal government should spend that money on proven solutions to crime and violence reduction. We cannot incarcerate our way out of violence. We've already tried that, and we've ended up with the largest prison population in the world without solving the problems of crime and violence. The addiction on jails and incarceration in this country, we have moved past that. It is racist, it is immoral, it is unholy, and it is not the way to drive violence down.
It's racist.
We cannot return to the same failed strategies that got us here in the first place. Under the previous presidential administration, we requested more federal resources to address gun violence in our city. We continue to make that same call. We have made significant progress on our own, but there is so much more that we can do if we had real support from the federal government.
Stop it a second. This idiot's predecessor, Lori Lightfoot, had some federal money, and she decided she was going to give it to the neighborhood folk, but she wound up giving it to some Hispanic gangsters, and they used it to set up a burglary, of several boxcars parked in the IC rail yard, and stole several tens of thousands worth of serious firearms from those multiple boxcars they broke in. Those firearms are now in traffic interstate in high crime areas, and they're contributing drastically to the violence in the inner cities. Now, that's what she did with her foolish ignorance.
Well, speaking of her, they spoke to her about Chicago and the National Guards, and I want to play what she had to say.
Okay, and it's a shithole. And the other thing is he's talking about investments being the cure. Who the hell is going to invest in a shithole that is crime?
Oh, no. But see, that's the hypocrisy from that mayor. But we're going to go back to the mayor, but I want to play this clip of Mayor Lightfoot.
Joining me now is Democratic former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot. Lori, thank you so much for spending your time with us this weekend. So what's your immediate reaction to the possibility of the National Guard being deployed to Chicago?
Well, obviously, it would be a terrible mistake. But as we've seen throughout his political career, and particularly this second term, President Trump likes breeding chaos and fear. But what I will urge my fellow Chicagoans is to lay daisies at the feet of any military force that shows up in our city. Don't show up in mass. Don't show up to engage in antagonistic tactics. Let's show what we know, which is how to protest peacefully in the city of Chicago.
Now, on Friday, President Trump suggested he'd send the National Guard to Chicago because that's what people in the city want. Here's what he had to say.
And the people in Chicago, Mr. Vice President, are screaming for us to come. They're wearing red hats, just like this one, but they're wearing red hats. African-American ladies, beautiful ladies, are saying, please, President Trump, come to Chicago. Please. I did great with the black vote, as you know, and they want something to happen. So I think Chicago will be our next, and then we'll help with New York.
All right, you heard the president's words right there. So what's your reaction to Trump's words and what he had to say?
It's painful to have a president who lives in his own fantasy world, who lies with such incredible ease. Nobody here in Chicago is asking him to come. Our violent crime rates are down as they are all across this country. He will manufacture a crisis. He will try to provoke confrontation and then use that as a justification. That's why we need to do what many before who engaged in peaceful protests, not only in this city, but across the country. We need to lay daisies at the feet of any military force here. The National Guard is not a police force. They are a military force. We've seen, unfortunately, tragedy strike when they've gone in other cities, particularly during the summer of 2020 in Minneapolis and Louisville. We don't need the National Guard here. We have great partnerships, and we have for decades with our local sheriff's department, the state police, our federal partners. There is no reason whatsoever that a political sideshow that President Trump is going to manufacture to send the military into the great city of Chicago. We're not going to have it. I'm confident that there will be lawsuits that will be brought, but we are mobilizing neighborhood by neighborhood to make sure that our residents actually feel safe, that our small businesses do not suffer economically, as has happened in other cities, but we'll be prepared to push back on what is an absolutely illegal authoritarian action on the part of this president.
Now, so in other words, his authoritarian response to restore law and order is somehow or another more harmful than all of those folk terrorized into staying home at night. They can't go out, can't shop. Bullets fly through the glass and through the thin walls of the tenements they live in, and their brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, mothers, fathers, friends, associates, grandparents are dying from violence, and that's okay. I mean, it's just a few of you dead folk. What is anybody complaining about? All of these folk, they're not really dead. You're just being lied to. The people can see this. They feel this. They're suffering from the fear of it, but that's a lie. And we're telling you the truth that there's no need to bring in anything to put this back in order. No, it's fine right now. Everything's good.
So
What the hell is wrong with these people?
here's the governor of Illinois, and he's basically saying that, if people who he sees, if he see people who are supporting for Trump to come in, he's going to be taking names. Let me play this clip.
Finally, to the Trump administration officials who are complicit in this scheme, to the public servants who have forsaken their oath to the Constitution to serve the petty whims of an arrogant little man, to any federal official who would come to Chicago and try to incite my people into violence as a pretext for something darker and more dangerous, we are watching and we are taking names. This country has survived darker periods than the one that we're going through right now, and eventually the pendulum will swing back, maybe even next year. Donald Trump has already shown himself to have little regard for the many acolytes that he has encouraged to commit crimes on his behalf. You can delay justice for a time, but history shows you cannot prevent it from finding you eventually. If you hurt my people, nothing will stop me, not time or political circumstance, from making sure that you face justice under our constitutional rule of law. As Dr. King once said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Humbly, I would add, it doesn't bend on its own. History tells us we often have to apply force needed to make sure that the arc gets where it needs to go. This is one of those times. I look forward to taking your questions in a few minutes, but first, I'd like to hand over our podium to Mayor Brandon Johnson.
You know what? You looked at a liar. You looked at a propagandistic liar who told his lies with a straight face. See, he's threatened people who only want to have public peace. I mean, he's not doing it. He's the mayor. I mean, he's the governor of the state of Illinois. Why hasn't he sent the state police down there to do something about restoring order? Oh, there's no problem. So all of these citizens in Chicago that have to worry about high crime circumstances, they're deluded. They don't know what they're seeing. They're suffering from mental health issues and they're misguided and delusional. So what is this guy trying to do when he's lying to us? And did you get this one? Trump is sending in street people to create violent moments to justify bringing in the National Guard. Well, Trump wasn't in charge over the last 4 years. Somebody else was. Jackass Biden and hyena Harris.
And so here's the thing.
What happened all then? How did this accident occur where all of this criminality was going on in Chicago over the last 5 years when Mr. Trump wasn't even in office? He's only been in for a few months.
But here's the thing.
It's been a whole year.
In Chicago, crime increased under the Biden administration because Chicago was really ground zero for the illegal migrants, and the audacity of the mayor, Brandon Johnson, of this governor Splitzer, to act like billions of dollars never entered the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago specifically for the illegal migrants. But now you want to talk about funding. So I want to play this clip here.
By the way, I'd issue a challenge to each of these gentlemen. Go walk the streets of Chicago down in the hood without coat and tie on and without a bodyguard and see if you dare.
So I want to play this clip here because I like the way this person broke down, how the mayor Brandon Johnson doesn't care about Chicago.
So Chicago's mayor Brandon Johnson says that Trump is intimidated by intellectual prowess of black men, and that Trump is the biggest threat to humanity in many, many years. He's pissed because he says that the federal government is withholding $800 million, which can go towards crime. But Mayor Brandon Johnson, you spent $600 million on illegal criminal immigrants against your own citizens, people who were born and raised from Chicago. You're not even able to fund education because of you. Chicago right now is $1 billion, probably and counting, in debt. He doesn't want Trump to come in there and clean up crime. But if you ask me, he need to clean up the police department who are gangs.
Yeah, all of the above. See, that's the reality. The reality is, do you feel safe walking out on your street at night to go for a stroll so you can get your exercise in? By yourself?
And it's the schools. You don't know this, but the school system is in debt over $1 billion.
Oh yeah, I
to lay off teachers because they can't keep the balance sheet. But what happened to those millions and billions of dollars that was flowing in under the Biden administration for these organizations, for the illegal migrants? You were sending the illegal kids to school, providing lunch, food, health care, jobs, apartments. But now you want to
Lightfoot gave a whole bunch of it away to illegal street gangs, which financed their criminal operations. So yeah, great.
Let me play this clip here.
Can't hear.
You can't hear?
Mm-mm.
Give me a second. Can you hear that?
Nope.
Did you hear that?
just some noise. I couldn't make out words.
Wait a minute. All right, let me try it again. Did you hear that?
It just sounds completely garbled and low, no volume to it.
Let me see something. Can you guys hear the video?
I can't.
No, it's playing. I don't know. It's something. It might be something on your end.
I can hear you fine.
But you can't. I don't understand why you
I
can't hear
heard
the
it
video.
fine, completely. I heard the governor and I heard Clown Boy here when he was on at first. I can't hear. I can read this. Mental health care services are supposed to be the solution to street violence. Yeah.
All right, go out and come back in because everybody else.
I can hear you fine.
Yeah, but everyone could hear the video loud and clear.
I'm reading the words. You've got those up. I can read it.
So he's saying Chicagoans don't want a military occupation of our city. We want our federal tax dollars sent back to us so we can continue building a safe and affordable city
Bullshit,
by
fool.
investing in our communities.
You're making the town into a shithole.
Well, what happened to the money that he got from the prior administration?
And why is it that your citizens of Chicago don't consider it a safe place to live?
Let me know if you can hear this.
And so, look, we're going to remain firm.
I can hear that fine.
I don't know why you couldn't hear the other one. I don't know. All right, let me play this one.
And so, look, we're going to remain firm. We'll take legal action. But the people of this city are accustomed to rising up against tyranny. And if that's necessary, I believe that the people of Chicago will stand firm alongside of me as I work every single day to protect the people of this city.
What?
Stop. The city is going to rise up so the criminals can get back in control or stay in control. Wow.
And they're not going to rise up to push back the fact. First of all, you're really asking your residents to rise up against the National Guards? That's crazy. But number two, they're not going to do it because they're tired of his ass. What you going to ask the boule people who are satisfied with you? No, because they ain't going to do it. The working people of Chicago,
They
young
live in gated communities, the people that like him, and out in the suburbs where they don't have to deal with this.
They don't even like him. He is not respected. So no, they're not going to rise up against the National Guard. And why would you even? And so here's the thing though, isn't he inciting some type of
Yeah,
violence?
and it's also stupid. Our people love being crime victims. It's dropping imperceptibly. We're going to lie and tell you it's the violent crime rather than the carefully planned criminality. But we're going to say everything's dropping across the board. So our people want to allow these criminals the freedom to commit crime. And anybody that comes in, he's a dictator if he says, I'm going to restore law and order. So people rise up to support this exploitation that the Democratic Party has been responsible for a long time and letting Chicago become a real live shithole. Go get on the Dan Ryan Express without somebody bodyguarding you and see, if you make it. Who does he remind you of? There's a sitcom somebody.
Of who? The mayor?
Yeah, the governor, this guy.
Archie Bunker?
Not quite. I was thinking Archie Bunker, but there's another
Or the
somebody.
honeymoons?
Not Jackie Gleason. There's another somebody that he looks just like.
Oh.
I'm trying to think of the name of this. It's not Bunker, and it's not Ralph Cram. Not Ralph Cram. What is? Who did Jackie Gleason play in The Honeymooners? But anyway.
Well, he was the main character, but
Yeah.
let me play. He said Archie too. Yeah, Archie too. I don't know. Okay. Let me play this clip.
Emergency that warrants deploying the National Guard.
Is he going to try to put National Guard around Michigan Avenue or downtown? Or is he going to go into Englewood or other parts of the city that do have a crime problem?
Former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel appeared on CNN on Sunday and was asked how he would handle crime amid President Trump's plan.
I would say work with us on public safety. Here are the 5 things you could do. Technology to deal with carjackings, prosecuting gangs and gun violence in the city, working on the issues of drugs and guns coming into the city, and helping coordinate task force that deal with confronting gangs throughout the city. Those are the things that I would say right now, partner with us. Don't try to come in and act like we can be an occupied city.
Well,
now Mayor Johnson says.
Remember, your current mayor says there's no problem at all. The crime is dropping. Whatever we have not been doing has been working so well. You know what that sounds like?
What?
The rhetoric that some of the bozo mayors of Chicago were trying to utter when they were trying to explain away Al Capone.
Oh, the mayors were trying to give an excuse for Al Capone?
They were trying to say, we have crime under control, but that was Al Capone's era. And then you hit the St. Valentine's Day massacre, and they were stuck with trying to explain this BS about crime has dropped so drastically in Chicago until they pull off. You know what the St. Valentine's Day massacre was. They walked in with the Thompson submachine guns and lined the victims up against the wall in a garage. Some of the cops, well, some of them dressed as cops, and they gunned them down.
Yeah, but maybe Al Capone was paying off these politicians. And
Yeah, well, that doesn't it sound the same though?
Yeah, it does. It does. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the mayor and the governor are being paid off by these Mexican drug cartels, because that's Chicago is a direct route for these Mexican drug cartels and Venezuelan drug cartels to bring in the guns and bring in the drugs.
Well, you know what always strikes me as funny? Drive up 55 to Chicago, and about 40 miles outside of Chicago, you have an immigration station because so many people coming up from the southern border are going up to Chicago. Now, I lived in Chicago for 6 months, on again and off again, 71st and Constance. And if you were downtown Chicago, you saw black people and white people coming out of the office buildings. Now you go downtown Chicago, you don't. You see Hispanics and white folk and Asian folk, but no black folk. I find it interesting. And I've been to Chicago fairly recently. They were trying to get me up at WVON a few years ago, and I still talk to people with WVON up there. And
I wanna replay this clip here because it's like a playbook that Democrats use.
Their lives are scripted.
Well, it's scripted, but they always bring in race.
As the mayor of this city, I can tell you that Chicagoans are not calling for a military occupation. They are calling for the same thing that we've been calling for some time, and that's investment. What safe cities across America all have in common, they invest in people. And that's what we're doing in Chicago. We need the federal resources to make sure that we're building more affordable housing, expanding mental and behavioral health care, education, all of these things that could reduce crime and provide real community safety. Instead of spending hundreds of millions of dollars for a publicity stunt to invoke chaos and terror, the federal government should spend that money on proven solutions to crime and violence reduction. We cannot incarcerate our way out of violence. We've already tried that, and we've ended up with the largest prison population in the world without solving the problems of crime and violence. The addiction on jails and incarceration in this country, we have moved past that. It is racist, it is immoral, it is unholy, and it is not the way to drive violence down.
Okay, it's racist to want law and order. The black folk in Chicago that are predominantly the direct and first victims of the criminal activity, they'd rather be robbed, subject to rapine, and subject to burglaries and carjackings. And they'd rather be subject to that gang activity, the violence that's coming in with the illegals. They'd rather be subject to that than to have a National Guard unit restore order. And then the other idiocy that I hear here is the typical Democratic Party mantra that all of this is caused by the lack of mental health treatment. The average person that is subject to the immediate effects of this criminality does not give a damn whether or not somebody's mentally ill. They want it to stop. The next lie is that somehow or another investment produces safe cities. It is the exact opposite. Safe cities induce investment, not investments cause safe cities. Safe cities induce investment. There's a heck of a difference, and he is an obfuscating liar who's trying to push this left-wing mantra of failure, incompetence, and disregard for the welfare of the people that live there, because they have an agenda that they're pushing that does not have much to do with the ordinary people. That is their political mantra to bring in illegals. Chicago has its ample store of that. It is something that is trying to push this far leftist mantra on the rest of the country. And it is pushing big because it's the third largest city in America. And it has failed, just like Los Angeles, just like New York, just like Memphis, just like Detroit, just like St. Louis, just like Kansas City, just like a number of other places. But you can see other big cities, like look at Florida. They get it under control. Texas is getting it under control. And they're about
Not
to
so fast.
say,
They have the illegal migrant thing under control, but listen, you got Dade County, you still got pockets, Fifth Ward in Houston.
yeah, I mean, I'm not denying that, but at least they've got a start on it, and they've cut back on one of the primary causalities, which
They
is
don't need the Fed. Yeah, they technically, yeah, they're not Memphis. They're not. I guess like Cleveland. But so I look at it like this. I look at it when we're talking about Chicago, even Baltimore, but particularly Chicago. I s- the people of Chicago should never let the governor or that mayor forget that they allow billions of dollars to come into their city to go to illegals.
Lori Lightfoot was giving it away before it became a subject of attention. Now, let me say this. When I was on the bench, criminal bench in Memphis, in order, not percentages, but absolute numbers of criminal defendants going through a system, number one was Los Angeles. Number two was New York. Number three was Chicago. Number 4 was Dallas. And then Memphis, which certainly wasn't the 5th largest city in America, was number 5 in absolute numbers of criminal defendants going through it. Number 6 was Houston, which is far larger than Memphis. And number 7 was Miami. And number 8 was Detroit. So Memphis had the 5th largest number of defendants for state criminal offenses in the entirety of the United States. And at the time, they were the 14th largest city. Now, it's interesting that Dallas had almost 35 some divisions going on 40 of criminal courts. So did Houston. Memphis only had 10. So I handled 1/10 of the 5th largest criminal docket in the whole of the United States, whereas Houston, 4 going on 5 times as many criminal court judges to handle a fewer number of people. Dallas having about the same number of criminal court judges to handle just a little bit incrementally more than Memphis. There's a lot of exposure you get by handling that many criminals. And when I say criminals, of course, there were some innocent people, aside from the protocol that anybody is innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, everybody. But in terms of what was actually going on, And see, it still continues. But the blue folk that run Memphis, the Democratic Party that has an ironclad monopoly on this place, they say nothing's wrong. But then when you look at the crooks, the biggest crooks who misappropriate public funds, come up with outright extortion, outright embezzlement, outright rip-offs, under the table bribery, you name it. They're Democrats. And they want to say we don't need anything, but I can guarantee you this is not exactly a safe place to be. You've come here in the last year. You've seen how, look at what they let happen to Aretha Franklin's birthplace. That is a disgrace. Look at what's happening in terms of the nightclubs are closed down. If you go to a nightclub in Memphis, the name of it is likely to be the Happy Mexican.
So
think about it.
So remember you said that he looked like someone. Somebody said this in the
Yeah, the guy that played Fred Flintstone in the movie. That's him. That's him. And what did he play in some sitcoms? There it is.
Right. So the resemblance.
There it is. An older edition.
Because they was putting Yabba Dabba Doo in
there it is. That's it. That's it. I knew it. Yabba Dabba Doo. That's what he
Shout out to the audience that figured it out. Who the judge was like, that's who he looked like.
Man, y'all live in Illinois, man. You got Yabba Dabba Doo, man.
Yabba Dabba Doo.
It's telling you, man. Yabba Dabba Doo. That other bozo, man, that you got for mayor of Chicago after Lori Lightfoot, man, you know, hey, he a good follow-up, man. That dude ain't got no kind of sense, man.
Another one. This is another
walk
one.
By himself without a police escort down in them places that's so safe. Yay.
Another one said John Goodman, because he played, let me share this. He played Fred Flintstone in the movie.
That's what I'm talking about. That's him. That's him. Yes, yes, yes. That's who I was thinking of. Yabba Dabba Doo.
Dang it, it's the husband on Roseanne TV. Oh yeah, yes, John Goodman. Yeah. So thanks, guys. All right.
Good research, fellows. I
Yeah,
really
good research.
appreciate that. Yes, yes.
So, 2 more things before we get up out of here, right? Just real quick. They finally got him. Let's see, let me play this.
Y oraron y nunca dejaron de creer y luchar por mi libertad. And this is why I want to thank each and every one of you who marched, lift your voices, never stop praying, and continue to fight in my name.
Gracias a mi pareja de vida, mi esposa Jennifer, mi hermano César, mi madre Cecilia, y toda mi familia.
Thank you to my life partner and wife, Jennifer, to my brother, Cesar, to my mother, Cecilia, to my children, to my nieces and nephews.
So,
What is this we're looking at?
okay, so that was the guy, what's his name? Kelmar Garcia. And he's finally being deported. So let me show this one too.
Who is this with the unkempt tie?
So remember the guy who they kept trying to deport, and then people was trying to sue to halt the deportation of that guy Garcia. They're saying because he was an illegal migrant and he was a gang person. So he's finally, it says Kilmar Abrego Garcia has been arrested by ICE in Baltimore, Maryland, and faces potential deportation to Uganda. Trump's ICE is ripping his family. Oh no, they're pro. But anyway, so it says ICE has arrested MS-13 terrorist Kilmar Abrigo Garcia in Baltimore, Maryland, and he now faces possible deportation to Uganda. So that was him today giving a speech, right?
Well, who's the guy they're showing in the middle right here?
This is his lawyer. So I wanted to play this clip here.
Es tremendo.
Could you say more about the lawsuit that was filed this morning against his current detention?
Yeah, so the lawsuit that was filed this morning is asking for an order that he not be allowed to be removed from the United States unless and until he's had full due process as to a claim for protection to any particular country that they want to name. Right now it's Uganda. You know, tomorrow it might be, who knows, right? The main issue, aside from just the conditions in the country, is that country going to actually let him stay there, right? I mean, they can offer to send him to Madrid, Spain, and unless Madrid, Spain is going to let him remain in that country, essentially all it is just a very inconvenient layover on the way to El Salvador, right? Which is the one country that it's already been determined that he can't be sent to, right? So our contention is that they can't send him to any one of the other 200 countries on earth unless that country is given credible assurances that he'll be allowed to have a legal status, such as Costa Rica has already done, right? Costa Rica has already offered refugee status. The suit was filed by Murray Osorio PLLC and the law firm of Quinn Emanuel.
Boys, ain't nobody gonna touch that man up in my jail. We's gonna give him a fair trial before we hang him. Ain't gonna be hanging nobody without no trial. Yeah, okay, fine. So the point is okay, due process of law. Actually, the situation is, I like the rubber border thing, which is if you crash the border, if they can show you're the same person, the border hasn't broken, it just expanded like a rubber band and you got way, way deep inside before it snapped you back to the border. So the question comes is if somebody knocks on the border or at an entry point and say, hey, I want to come into America and I want to have a trial on the issue of whether I should go back to El Salvador where they want me for a lot of criminality or wherever it is, you can just say, no, you're not coming in. And your due process of law consists of whether or not you got caught or you evaded the border. So that's the issue. Did you evade the border? And if you ain't supposed to be here, ain't nothing supposed to happen nice to you like you was illegal, like.
True, but my thing is, listen, if he get refugee status in Costa Rica, that ain't a bad look for him.
No, it's not. I know somebody that's
I don't
got
think you want to go to Uganda, but I think Uganda, Costa Rica is way better than El Salvador.
Yeah, I mean, I know somebody that did commercials for the barbecue thing, and I did some commercials for her whiskey business. Just bought it at a nightclub she fixed up in Costa Rica. So I mean, it ain't a bad place to be.
Well, Trump,
I mean, but you know, where they're sending him.
he said he will allow 600,000 Chinese students to come in here. Let me play this.
President Xi would like me to come to China. It's a very important relationship. As you know, we're taking a lot of money in from China because of the tariffs and the different things, and it's a very important relationship. We're going to get along good with China. I hear so many stories about we're not going to allow their students. We're going to allow their students to come in. We're going to allow. It's very important. 600,000 students. It's very important. But we're going to get along with China. But it's a different relationship that we have now with China. It's a much better relationship economically than it was before. With Biden, boy, what he allowed that, I mean, they just took him to the cleaners. You know, President.
So he said he will allow 600,000 Chinese students.
Students.
No.
They have smart students.
I don't give a damn.
Oh, but it doesn't hurt. See, the deal is the way it works. They used to invite American students to Europe, to Russia, to places like that, to Japan. And they invited Japanese students, they invited European students, et cetera, to America because they get to know each other. So when it comes time for you to set up a deal involving international trade and commerce, you're not dealing with complete strangers. So people are friends of yours instead of enemies, so you can deal with each other amicably. It promotes international peace. And remember, we don't want any hydrogen bombs going off, any thermonuclear warheads
Well,
detonating any
but
place.
here's the thing though, because China is our adversary. And then their students and their young people are our competition. So you
Yeah.
let them come here, be educated with the best schools and best facilities, and they're going to go back to their country and make their country better. But where's the investment in the American kids and
But
students?
the problem is this: the American kids could go over to China if they had
Can we?
something in school, high school and junior high, but they
Not
don't.
100,000.
Well, even that many. See, here's what's going
We
on.
don't have 600,000 American students.
No, hold on. It's pathetic. See, China is interesting. It's the largest country in the world. And what that means is the United States has 300 plus million citizens. China has 300 million citizens plus a billion extra. And whereas in the United States, you have to take out student loans to go to college, your education is absolutely scot-free in China if you want to apply yourself. If you want to see how it is, what kind of phone do you have? Who makes your phone?
Mm-hmm.
The one you're using all the time, isn't it an iPhone?
Mm-hmm.
It's made in China. Next time you order one, ask them to give you the shipping information. This one that I'm on right now, that's all busted up due to
That's still made in China. But here's the
made
thing.
in
So
China.
right now in 2024, there are only 800 American students studying in China. Prior
That's because
to
we're
that,
not
let me
qualified.
finish. Prior to that, it was at its peak of 15,000. So you're talking about 15,000 compared to 600,000. Like,
But
come
the point is look, let me tell you, I was involved in admissions several times on the collegiate level. What the problem is that you don't find as many American students who've aced these aptitude tests, who have the grade point averages who have done this other thing. So technically,
But
if
that is
you,
because our government, state and federal, are not properly investing in education.
of course they're not. So why would anybody
So
invite
then
them?
why are you okay, so here's what I'm saying. They're not investing properly in education, but you're going to bring people from a country that are investing in their education. So they come here advanced in a lot of areas because their country invested in them. How about you stop letting all these 600,000 people, over 600,000, because not just the Chinese, but 600 Chinese are the most, but there are other students in other countries. How about you take that money that you're invested in these foreign students and invest in American students?
You're not investing in them. You're allowing them to come. Their governments are paying the tuitions
No, no, no,
of
no, no.
their
I'm talking about
facilities.
no, no, no. I'm talking about they are when they come here, they are already prepared academically because their
I know.
country invested. What I'm saying is our country don't invest in us the way China
Yes,
invests
that's
in
true.
their students.
That's true. But you know why it's advantageous to us? Because you get 10 Chinese students and 100 American students gathered in the student union. 90 of the American students are whining about discrimination and, oh, woe is us, we're victims, and they're not giving us what we are entitled to. And the Chinese students who are doing better than them in the class, even though English isn't their first language, they're whipping it up in class, and they're going, what the devil do you mean about entitlement? What does that mean? Why are you whining about everything? Just go take advantage of the opportunity you have. See, that's good for American students to be exposed to another group of students who are their peers in age who didn't come from all of this affluence, but had a little bit of hard scrabble in their lives. And they're saying, hey, you need to pay attention to your homework, read this stuff, study this stuff. That's how we're getting ahead, because we're dedicated to this cause. And you want to go get high, go party, and go out on dates, and you're more concerned about your spring break than you are about your grades for the spring classes. So what's
I
going on?
agree with you on that, but then I disagree on something. I think you are, I think that I think it's 50-50. Yes, it's the American culture, but however, the other side is the investment in education has drastically dropped throughout the decades. The investment when you were going to school was much higher than it is today.
Of course, yes. But
So
that's not
so
quite
I would say it's 50-50. Is what you were saying as far as the American culture where kids are just not that interested, but it's also neither is our government on state and federal level.
well, see, here's the other thing that you need to consider. Humanity has always sought to educate the residents of arrival. The Romans educated people from all around the periphery of their empire. See, that's been a historic thing. Uh, right now, one of the problems in Ukraine is the way the African descendants were being so badly mistreated by the Ukraine government. Why were there African descendants in Ukraine? Because Stalin brought over a bunch of them free of charge at Soviet expense in the early 1950s because it was deemed advantageous to the Soviet Union to educate Africans and other folks so they would be friendly toward the Soviet Union in later years. So they came over to the Soviet Union. They didn't want to stay in the Moscow area where it gets 40 below zero in the winter. They stayed in the southernmost part of the Soviet Union, which was Ukraine. Now, what we wind up with is the Chinese are educating a whole bunch, 4, 5, 6, 10 times that many Africans, so that they will become beholden to Africa. The United States brought in Kenyans. That's how Obama got started. His daddy was a Kenyan student who was brought in as a grad student to be friendly to the United States. See, it has a long-term fallout. Everybody does that. The Romans, again, were famous about bringing in Germanic princes and smart German warriors and educating them as Romans. See, the Greeks did that too. The Turks did that. That's
Okay,
what they
so this
did.
this is okay. It's not an unusual practice. I get it,
Yeah.
but I just think if you're gonna, it's and there's nothing wrong with bringing people in, but you can't neglect your people there. Just like Chicago, neglecting the residents, American
That's because
citizens of
they turned
Chicago for the illegal. So
That's because they went off on stuff that's intangible garbage as your agenda, your propaganda uh, beneficiary, and that's not working. I keep saying they keep trying to convert the country to some kind of crazy outlook where you're not supposed to be brave, courageous, duty bound, honor bound, dealing with logic, rationality, reason, objectivity, because that's a man thing and that promotes war. I see
I get what no, I get what you're saying.
that. I
So
just heard that over and over in the late 60s. War is a bad thing, man. We need to be about love, man.
well, I
Like,
think maybe this is one of the tactics of bringing love by bringing in students, and having an open line of communication so that you're not adversary of war.
well,
Um,
give you an example.
well, I want to move on to something else because we got to go.
Just a quick one. Pearl Harbor. The mastermind to Pearl Harbor was Admiral Yamamoto. Okay. He went to Harvard and other educational institutions in the United States. He told the Japanese high command, he said, you do not need to provoke the United States of America. It is a sleeping giant, and what you do not wish to do is awaken it. They told him he had orders anyway, as their smartest admiral, to plan the attack on Pearl Harbor. He said, please don't make me do this. You will be very sorry if you do. So he did it anyway, and Japan became very sorry that he did. But at least you had somebody in very high places who was saying, we don't need to be enemies with these people. I know what they're doing is very grievous and racist, but we need to go deal with it another way. He wound up getting shot down by a flight of P-38s because he was so punctual that they could count on him being exactly in a certain place at exactly the same time. He didn't make it through the war, but he did tell them what he did.
All
And
right.
that's why you
This is
educate
so this
foreign.
is so this is the last thing here, because got to bring in the law. Um, Supreme Court allows Trump administration to terminate $783 million in NIH grants leaked to DEI initiatives. By a vote of 5-4, the Supreme Court on Thursday agreed to allow the National Institute of Health, the largest public funding source for biomedical research in the world, to terminate $783 million in grants linked to DEI initiatives. In a brief, unsigned order, the court granted a request from the Trump administration to pause a ruling by a federal judge in Massachusetts that required the federal government to continue making the payments. Also, by a vote of 5-4, the court left in place a different portion of the judge ruling, which had thrown out internal NIH guidance documents describing the agency's policy priorities. Justice Amy Coney Barrett provided the key vote on each issue. She joined Justice Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh in voting to allow NIH to terminate the grants, but she joined Justice Chief John Roberts and Justices Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson in voting to leave the lower court's ruling on the guidance documents in place. She's a
In other
flip
words,
flopper.
what it is procedurally, they left the lower court's ruling intact on an administrative matter, and on the main issue of the lawsuit, they said we're dissolving the injunction, try the case so we can see what we really have after the facts come in under somebody being on the witness stand and testifying.
Well, Jackson had sharp words for her colleagues, describing the ruling as Calvin Ball jurisprudence, a reference to the Calvin and Hobbes cartoon with a twist. Calvin Ball has only one rule. There are no fixed rules. We seem to have two. That one and this administration always wins.
She scratched too much of her brains out, scratching her wig head when she was getting confirmed. I think they should have brought in Roger E. Clifton from the Second Circuit instead of her. Would have been a much better choice.
So it says NIH ended hundreds of grants it linked to DEI related studies in response to a series of executive orders issued by President Donald Trump after his inauguration in January. The first order, titled Ending Radical and Wasteful Government DEI Programs and Preferencing, instructed the director of the Office of Management and Budget, assisted by the Attorney General and the Director of Office of Personnel Management, to work to end discriminatory programs, including illegal DEI programs in the federal government. It was followed by two other executive orders titled Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism and Restoring Biological Truth to the Federal Government, and ending.
Okay, stop right there. Stop
Wait,
right
let me just read this last sentence. And ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based opportunity.
Okay, what that means is spending federal money to teach classes that, okay, say you should be taught that they're discriminating against you by basically exercising First Amendment rights to have an opinion on something.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be protected from somebody else's. In other words, the classes that can't be funded anymore are saying it's wrong for somebody to have a First Amendment opinion. So why are you teaching somebody that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
It makes sense. Like this thing about exalting weakness. What in the world is that about? See, that's essentially what we have. We exalt weakness. In other words, if somebody says something you don't like, you are not supposed to be subject to the chance exposure to that.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can't say the R word because of YouTube, but
Right.
yet every major newspaper in America, CNN, ABC, MSNBC, CBS, Fox, you name it, they use the R word all the time when there's an incident. But yet somebody's sensitivity on YouTube is such that they gotta hear this. You see, in other words, teaching a class to teach people how to oppose the R word on YouTube because you may be sensitive to it. That doesn't make good sense. So, yeah, that's not supposed to be something that 50 states worth of people have to spend their money on.
Mm-hmm. He is also, it says here that Justice Department backs lawsuits seeking to end grants for Hispanic serving colleges, calling them unconstitutional. The Trump administration said it will not defend a decades old grant program for colleges with large numbers of Hispanic students that is being challenged in court, declaring the government believes the funding is unconstitutional. In a memo sent to Congress, the Justice Department said it agrees with a lawsuit attempting to strike down grants that are reserved for colleges and universities where at least a quarter of undergraduates are Hispanic. Congress created a program in 1998 after finding Latino students were attending college and graduating far lower rates than white students. The Justice Department officials argue the program provides an unconstitutional advantage based on race or ethnicity.
Okay, what that is you're colored, so therefore you get more money because you can't make it. That's what it says, but what does that say about you if you're one of the groups that's classified as colored, Hispanic? Some of the categories, subcategories under Hispanic, Black, Native American, Asian, that doesn't apply to them because they're usually at the top being the smartest, or you're an Indian, which is, interestingly enough, white people are in the middle and at the top in per capita income and education are Indians. I sent you that chart
Yeah, I
last
told you
week.
I gotta do research on that
So
chart.
I
But
find it, in other words, obviously some people of color are not inferior when it comes to economic circumstances, and others may be, but the idea that you should be able to teach that because you are of color, you are inferior, you won't make it, is kind of insulting to the particular brand of people of color. In other words, how would that work in
well, I
basketball?
put it like this. I hear what you're saying, but you could replace race and ethnicity and just put underprivileged or poor.
Well, yeah, but still,
Because
you
it's
have
not race-based, it
no, that's
doesn't fall under
not
DEI,
racist at
but
all.
let me just say this, but it is true if you are poor opposed to someone who is upper class or rich, there is an educational advantage.
Well, yeah, that's true. Except you have to make it relevant to the educational process. One of the biggest examples that actually was something the Old South did that defeated their purposes, they refused to allow black folk to go to their colleges and universities, like Ole Miss in Mississippi or in North Carolina or whatever. So a lot of black Americans in the 20s and 30s and in the 40s got sent to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, which is as good as it gets because they weren't going to allow them to go to Ole Miss. But you have these same black folk that come from sharecropping situations, rural areas, and so forth. They make it in Harvard, Yale, Princeton, which defeats the whole argument. So it's like an interesting thing in consideration. Now, for some reason, there is this bit that black folk can't get in Harvard, Yale, Princeton, et cetera, Stanford, these kind of places, whereas 40, not 40, not 50, not 60, but 70, 80, and 90 years ago, when the racism was really hardcore and segregation was totally legal under American law, black folk could make it well in these institutions.
Mhm.
So it's like something's wrong with the equation. And
What happened? That's not oh,
favor by taking that away and saying you can make it. 1950, how many black folk were playing NFL? Very few. How many black folk were in MLB, Major League Baseball? Very few.
so
How
but
many
here's
were
the thing
playing
though, but it was a
basketball?
question, but here's the question, were they being discriminated against and not allowed in?
Yeah, one
It
of the
was
most
discriminatory
racist
practice.
institutions in America in 1946, 7, 8, and 1950 was the National Bar Association. It was integrated when a guy who ran track and played football at UCLA, Don Barksdale, got hired by the Lakers to be the first black in the NBA. They did a movie about the first black, but they didn't even mention him. They mentioned somebody that was the third black. Okay, the Rams hired a guy named Kenny Washington, first black in the NFL. That was 1946. The Dodgers hired Jackie Robinson, the first black in MLB in 1946. Also, two more. Don Newcomb, who was 17 years old, he was a pitcher, and they hired Roy Campanolo, who was a catcher. So the Dodgers hired three black folk in 1946. They kept Campanolo and Newcomb in the minors for several years before they moved him up and let Robinson go directly on into the in Major League Baseball. So that's when they started this process. I mean,
Okay.
they had so few black folk, I can name every one of them that played in the NFL up until 1950. Marion Motley with the Cleveland Browns. He played football. They brought in Woody Strode with the Rams. He became an actor, played a lot of black
Yeah,
parts.
we don't need to go down the
No,
sports
I mean,
history
I just
memory.
for people to name. And then you got Buddy Young came in with the Detroit
Yes,
Lions.
okay,
He
so
ran
let's
track.
let's swing it back. Let's swing it back.
Okay,
Let's swing
I
it
am. I have two more because I know them, and I want to mention them. You have Deacon Dan Towler, not Deacon Jones, the defensive end, but Deacon Dan Towler with the Rams. It was along with Tank Younger with the Rams, with the first two brothers coming out of Grambling. That was 1949. So those were all the people you had playing in the NFL in 1950, and I just illustrated our few by naming all of them. So now how many do you have? But did they have to have affirmative action for those brothers playing football or basketball where they say, okay, these guys, you know, if they can only maintain a 40% percentage from the floor if they're playing basketball, then they get to play in
Well,
NBA.
this decision is not from. We're talking about the Supreme Court siding with the Trump administration to terminate $783 million in NIH grants linked to DEI initiatives that has nothing to do with affirmative action.
No, well, it does. See, in other words, the grants are all saying you're inferior. You can't make it without help. That's
Well, the
essentially what
grants is just for a study. It's for
I
different
know. That's
studies.
you're studying
But
why you're
but see, here's the
inferior.
thing, though. But here's the thing: what's wrong with studying different genres or different what different
In other words,
I don't want to say things because that's so elementary. Studying different situations that happens in society because why and I don't want to go down the sports conversation because we got to wrap it up. But yeah, the reason why for a while, a long time, you've seen predominantly white, and then you started seeing sprinkles of black people, particularly in football. But at one point, it was said within the NFL administration and the NFL team owners, they thought that a black person was not educated enough to be a quarterback. But that's not true. It was discriminatory practices, particularly in the private entity, that prohibited black men for being in baseball, basketball, and football. However, when they started realizing we could make money because they are very talented, so you bring in the talent, which was, we look at the leagues now, basketball, football is predominantly black, right? Basically, and so much money is coming in. So when it comes to money, all that discriminatory racist stuff kind of goes out the window. Even though
well,
you were practicing it for so long from since the beginning up until a certain point, but now you want to increase your bottom line. So yeah, let's let them in because they're talented and they're going to bring us more money and we're going to sell more tickets and we're going to have more marketing and advertisement.
we're not talking about sports directly
No, we're
about
not.
education.
But you're
My
talking about the whole
was
DEI with the grant.
Yeah, but my point is even back in the 20s and 30s and 40s, when segregation was ironclad legal under American law, you had all of these black folk at Harvard, Yale, Princeton who got in through the front door. They did not have affirmative action. They made it. Got in UCLA, Berkeley, Stanford, you name it. I was talking about with the sports metaphor is where there was no affirmative action, they made it. You can talk about black folk can't operate fast, complex machinery, but then the 332nd for 1944 and 45 were the leading scorers in the whole Army Air Force in Europe for the last 9 months of the war. So what put that
So
to
basically,
the
wait, so
side?
let me just bring it back to the topic. So basically, cutting the millions of dollars to these grants for these gender studies or whatever basically the Trump administration is basically saying we don't need that. That is wasting money. And to the point that you were making, the times a high, it was a blacks being admitted into Harvard or whatever, a high number. It's probably higher now, but for during that time, for that time where there was no 1965 Civil Rights Act, there was no affirmative, there was none of that, but there were black people going into these. Well, it's not a whole lot, but for that time, you could say it was a good portion, but it wasn't a lot of enrollment in Harvard of black people.
Okay, well, let me
You
say
could
this.
kind of count it on one hand, but I get the sentiment that you're making. But how I look at it like this: the Trump administration is basically trying to go back to a time to where you got in on merit, and an institution cannot discriminate against you because of your race or gender, or sexuality. No, they cannot. But we're not going to let you come in because you're black as well. So it has to be merit based without discrimination.
Yeah, everything you say. See, from another perspective, these DEI programs they have that they are funding, I think they're propaganda programs that are subtly designed and intended to convince black students that they are failures and that they can't do as well as white folk, which is why they need the programs. See, that's one way of looking at it. I also know this. UCLA, where I'm an alumnus, double alumnus, they had more black students in the 1930s and 40s admitted to UCLA than got admitted in 2004 and 5 to UCLA. And I was working with the grad students or the alumni with their admissions program. So there were 90 some thousand students at UCLA in 2005, and they admitted one black freshman, or may have been 2004. So that was just an absolute disgrace compared to the number of black folk that were admitted to UCLA in 1935 when there was no such thing as affirmative action. You see, no such thing when you start talking about 1965, when I got in UCLA, they had not invented affirmative action. Myself
Right.
and
And
some other
I see what
students
you're saying.
helped invent the stuff.
Right. The enrollment percentages of black enrollment was higher than it is today in PWIs.
And they didn't even have it. You had
They
to
didn't
get
even
through the
have it.
front
Yeah, yeah.
door.
So, all right. So that's it. Of course, when we record on Thursday, we could dive a little bit deeper with the DEI stuff or whatever. But thank you, Judge. Good show, good discussions. Oh, let me highlight this. The people who did send in a super chat. Thank you again to Hella Mel. Appreciate you. Thank you to Julie. Thanks. Can judge issue orders with recusal motion, Phil? That was from earlier. I forgot what that was sent for, but thank you.
Question, just curious.
This is from earlier, but can a judge issue orders with recusal motion filed? I don't know what that was related to. That's
In
from
other words, a recusal motion is judge, for good cause. You should not be on this case because you know somebody, you represented somebody, or your firm represented somebody, one of your kinfolk is related to or does business with somebody, or some circumstances that aren't necessarily bad.
We get it. We
You
get it. We
can't
get it.
be on here.
All right.
You should excuse
All right.
yourself.
All right. All right. Let me get to this one. And by the way, honestly, I'll deal with that later. I'm not going to bring that up. M. Fortune, Judge O'Brien is a warehouse of valuable information, knowledge. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Thank you guys for tuning in. And Tuesday, X Space Tuesday.
Yeah.
So catch the judge tomorrow on X Space, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at Judge Joe Brown TV. So that would be tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern. And I will see you Wednesday. And that's it.
Yeah.
Good night.
Okay, we're finished.
No, I gotta do the outro.
Okay.
Wait a minute.